welcome to the Tank Podcast. In this episode, I speak to two of the Summer Reader's guest editors, Anthony Bird and Taylor Bradley of Honford Star. The pair tell us about how they started the press and how they made their book selections for the issue.
Hi, I'm Tina. Tell us who you are.
My name is Anthony Bird, and I'm one of the co-founders of Honford Star, along with Taylor. Honford Star is a publishing house, and we publish translated fiction from East Asia. We've published fiction from Korea, Japan, mainland China, and Taiwan. And we've tried to publish books that we couldn't find in the bookshops published by other publishers. So, for example, the kind of offbeat genre style books that kind of straddle the line between genre fiction and literary fiction. And one of the key things that we do at Honford Star is we hire book designers from East Asia. So our books are designed by designers from places like Taiwan and Korea. And we think that gives us a really unique look. And our books, we think they look great, but also they look a little bit different from what's out there in the bookshops published by other publishers.
Hi, I'm Taylor Bradley, and I'm the other half of Honford Star. I guess we started Honford Star in about 2016, and it took us a little bit to get our first books off the ground. But then 2017, 2018, we published a series of classic East Asian books. So like kind of like books from the 20s and 30s and 40s. And then after that, we moved to more modern books starting in 2020. We had a bunch of them planned to come out, and then COVID hit, and that kind of delayed a lot of our books. In 2021, we had 5 books come out. And that was kind of like our big relaunch, I guess. And then going forward, we're going to have hopefully about 4 or 5 books a year, all in East Asian genre fiction and literary fiction.
How did you start Honford Star?
So Honford Star came about when me and Taylor met 12 years ago in Korea, because we were both teaching English over there. And we became friends, and we shared an interest in literature. We didn't have specific interests in East Asian literature, but we both enjoyed various American and British authors. And also we enjoyed some of the classics from like France and Russia. So we had this interest in general fiction. Being in Korea, we would discuss literature, and we were kind of interested in what was Korean literature like. But even in Korea, we couldn't really find translations of Korean literature. So that really got us thinking about, like, we could really publish this. We could find a translator. We could make some of this work available. We first started publishing our books in 2017. And around that time, there was a lot less fiction from places like Korea and China than there is now. Our publishing history is we've ridden the wave of Korean literature particularly. And I think right now we are in a little bit of a golden age of translated fiction from East Asia, which is great to see. And I think we've really benefited from this renewed interest in East Asian literature.
How did you go about making your selections for the summer reader?
When we were thinking about making the selection for the Tank Summer Reader issue, we wanted to get many East Asian countries represented. We tried to make selections from all of the countries like Japan, Taiwan, China, Korea, and try to get like a sample from each of them, at least one. And then we also looked at smaller presses, because we feel like right now that smaller presses are doing a wider variety of stuff. The major publishers will just do the same author over and over again. Smaller publishers will take risks on people who are unknown in English or kind of more off the beaten path type of experimental stuff.
We wanted to include a variety of books from East Asia, so not just a variety of countries, but also a variety of styles. So we included some poetry from Isang, and also we included short stories, for example, Bora Chung's Cursed Bunny, and also novels like The Cabinet. We think the different styles really do encompass everything from something that's pretty close to like genre and science fiction, and also stuff that's really avant-garde and experimental when it comes to Isang's poetry. So our selection of books aren't really supposed to be a comprehensive selection of what's being published coming out of East Asia these days, but we wanted just to really highlight what we thought were the interesting titles coming out. We try to choose books that maybe aren't the most famous books by East Asian authors like Murakami. So we wanted to highlight some of the smaller names that are maybe unknown to readers in the UK, but in their home countries, they're the huge superstars.
So when we were thinking about the books as a whole, a lot of them kind of straddle the line between genre literature and literary fiction. For example, our biggest or our most famous book, Cursed Bunny, is a short story collection that contains, science fiction, ghost stories, things like that. And then The Cabinet by the popular Korean author Kim Moon-soo contains like aspects that are almost like short stories embedded into the novel. He will describe different fantastical people, like people who have a gingko tree growing out of their thumb, or people who eat only glass. And so even within the novel structure, there's kind of these shorter stories embedded within them. And then the same goes with our most recent book, Ninth Building by Zhou Jingji. He's told his life story in a series of semi-autobiographical vignettes. So each vignette is only about 3 or 4 pages about his life during Mao's Cultural Revolution, first in Beijing, and then when he got shipped off to a re-education camp in the countryside. Even though each story is only about 4 pages long, it combines together into a longer, more interesting narrative in a way that you don't see very often in books published in English.
Tell us about some of the books on your list.
So one of the books we chose is Tower by Bae Myung-hoon, and this is it's a collection of interconnected short stories, all set in a tower that is it's about 600 stories high. So it's a science fiction book. It's basically a satirical account of the kind of megacity that becomes the focus of a country. So Bae Myung-hoon, he majored in political science. So there's heavy political humor aspects to the book. And also he likes to touch upon social issues like corruption, and even religion comes up in the book a few times. So it's a really funny book, and it's a great sense of humor, but at the same time it's very clever in the way that it does raise social issues.
Another book that we chose is Cursed Bunny, which we published last year and was recently nominated for the Booker Prize, the International Booker Prize. And it was the only short story collection to make the short list. And it's 10 short stories by Bora Chung and then translated by Anton Her. They all focus on things like life as a woman in Korea, or the future under AI, or other like modern social issues. But each one is told in kind of a different genre. So take, for example, the first story is kind of body horror, where like a woman goes to the bathroom one day, and as she's about to flush, she hears like a golem, like a poop golem in her toilet, like saying "mother," and it'll go from that, like this very strange, surreal story. It'll switch to a science fiction story or to like a Korean folktale. And so it encapsulates a lot of different types of lots of different types of genres, all within like her stories about modern living.
One of our selections is the selected works by Isang. And Isang was a Korean poet, fiction writer, architect, and painter during the Japanese occupation period. And he wrote these really experimental and avant-garde poems that even today, looking back, they're really wild, and they've got a great sense of humor. I feel like they're very playful, and they do address some serious things that Isang was experiencing living under Japanese colonialism at the time. But they're really inventive, and there's a lot of fun in the things that he does. Isang was one of the reasons we actually founded Honford Star. So when me and Taylor first started thinking about what kind of literature there was in Korea, because we were unable to find translated literature, Isang was one of the names that we discovered, and we were amazed that this wasn't available in English. So we found some very small translations like here and there on the internet, and we were just amazed that a collection of Isang's work wasn't available. It was only since 2020 that Isang has been available in English, when he was published by Wave Books. And this collected works contains some fiction and some of his essays as well, and a lot of his poetry translated from the Korean, which was his native language, and also the Japanese, which he also wrote in.
Another book that we chose is called Strange Beasts of China by Yang Gi, and it's a series of stories about different beasts that populate a fictional town. And so there'll be the sorrowful beast and the joyful beast, and these beasts will be almost human. They'll resemble humans in many ways, except for perhaps they'll have gills behind their ears, or their elbows will have sharp bones sticking out of them, things like that. Each beast almost seems to reflect like a different aspect of society. Like, it's tempting to read into a beast to be like a metaphor for like the rich, or a metaphor for the poor, or for young students looking for a job but with no hope of getting one. It's hard to put each beast into a category. And then over the course of the story, we follow the protagonist, who's out of work student who turned reporter, as she deals with her professor from her university, and as she tries to investigate the beasts and kind of publicize their plight.
How fascinating. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
To hear more podcasts from Tank, you can subscribe on all major podcast platforms or follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is by Himera.